What happens when the people you've sacrificed everything for turn around and treat you like you were never enough? When love and loyalty are repaid with entitlement and ingratitude? My name is Emma, and for years I gave my all to my husband, David, and his two children, Noah and Lily. I raised them, loved them, and built a home where they never lacked anything. But in the end, I was nothing more than a convenience, a walking paycheck, a caretaker they took for granted. Until the day I walked away. And when I did, they never saw it coming. I still remember the first time I met Noah and Lily. Their big, wide eyes carried the weight of loss, their hearts too young to understand what it meant to grow up without a mother. They were polite, quiet at first, but I could see the flicker of hope in their faces when I smiled at them. I wanted to be that light in their lives, to give them the stability they had lost. When I married David, I wasn't just marrying a man, I was committing to a family, stepping into a role most people wouldn't dare take on. And I took that responsibility seriously. I wasn't trying to replace their mother, but I wanted them to know that I was there for them in every way that mattered. I gave them everything. I worked long hours ensuring they had the best education, a warm home, and everything they could possibly need. Every school play, every soccer game, every birthday party, I was there, cheering the loudest, making sure they felt loved. In the early years, it felt like we had built something real. Lily would cuddle next to me during movie nights, whispering about her latest crush. Noah, though always a bit more distant, would sometimes ask me for advice, little glimpses of trust shining through his teenage bravado. And David, he always reassured me, always said I was doing an amazing job. But the thing about love is that sometimes, when you give too much, people start to forget the value of what they have. The first signs of change were subtle. Noah, who used to thank me for making his favorite dinner, started grumbling that it wasn't the same as Mom's. Lily, once so sweet and affectionate, started rolling her eyes when I asked her about her day. I chalked it up to teenage moods, to the natural growing pains of kids trying to find themselves. But then, the comments started. "You're not my real mom." It was thrown in casually at first, like a knife hidden inside a joke. A response to a simple rule, a bedtime reminder, a request to clean their rooms. I would shake it off, pretending it didn't sting, pretending it didn't chip away at the foundation of everything I had built. But over time, the words grew sharper, the tone colder. And the worst part? David did nothing. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table, Noah came home late without a word. I asked him where he had been, not with anger, just concern. He barely glanced up from his phone. "Why do you care?" "Because I'm your mother," I said, my voice steady but firm. He let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "No, you're not. You're just some woman Dad married." Silence filled the air. I turned to David, expecting, no, begging him to say something, to defend me, to remind Noah that I had been there for him for years. But David only sighed, rubbing his temples. "Emma, let it go. He's just a kid." Let it go, let it go. That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the framed family photos on the wall. My reflection stared back at me through the glass. Tired, unappreciated, invisible. I had given them my whole heart, and in return I was nothing more than an afterthought. But something in me shifted that night. I wasn't going to beg for love. I wasn't going to keep giving to people who saw me as nothing. They had no idea what was coming next. The morning after Noah's words sliced through me like a blade, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. It was like I had stepped outside of myself, seeing the reality of my situation for the first time. I had spent years pouring love, effort, and energy into this family, into these children, into David, only to be met with indifference at best, outright disdain at worst. And last night, when I needed him most, David had chosen silence. I should have known better. At breakfast, I moved through the motions, setting the table, making coffee, buttering toast, things I had done for years without thinking. But as I watched Noah shove his plate away without a thanks, and Lily scrolled through her phone without a word, something inside me snapped. I wasn't invisible. I would not be invisible. For the first time, I didn't remind them about their schedules. I didn't rush to grab Noah's forgotten gym bag. I didn't pack Lily's lunch when she sighed dramatically about being too tired. Instead, I took my coffee and walked out of the house, leaving them to fend for themselves. And they noticed. That evening, David pulled me aside, his voice carrying a forced calm that I recognized all too well. It was the voice he used when he wanted me to be the bigger person, to smooth things over, to fix everything again. Emma, I get that you're upset, but you can't just shut down like this. The kids are used to you being there. I let out a breathless laugh, shaking my head. Used to me? Like I'm some household appliance? His jaw tightened, frustration flashing in his eyes. That's not what I meant. You're their stepmother. You took on that responsibility when you married me. There it was. Not mother, not partner, a responsibility, a duty. I crossed my arms. Funny how you say that now. Where was that responsibility last night when Noah told me I was just some woman you married and you let him? Where was it when Lily started treating me like a maid instead of a parent? David sighed, rubbing his temples like I was the one being unreasonable. They're kids, Emma. They don't mean it. No, David, I said, my voice sharp. They do. And you let them. The room fell silent, and for the first time I saw the truth. David had never really seen me as their mother. He saw me as a convenient placeholder, a caregiver, a provider, but never truly part of them. That was the moment I made my decision. I wasn't going to fight for scraps of love anymore. I wasn't going to beg to be treated like family. I was done. And soon they would all realize just how much they had taken me for granted. The first thing I did after that conversation with David was stop giving. It wasn't immediate. At first, it was just small things. I stopped picking up after them. When Noah left his dirty dishes in the sink, I didn't wash them. When Lily forgot her school project at home, I didn't rush to drop it off. When David casually expected me to handle dinner, because I always did, I ordered takeout just for myself. The first day, they didn't notice. The second day, they were confused. By the third, they were irritated. Mom, I can't find my basketball jersey, Noah grumbled as he stomped into the kitchen. I sipped my coffee, barely looking up from my book. Then you should probably check the laundry. He blinked, caught off guard. Well, yeah, but you usually... I set my cup down with a quiet clink. Noah, I'm not your maid. His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but I had already turned my attention back to my book. Lily was no different. Did you get my dress from the cleaners? She asked the next afternoon, scrolling on her phone. Nope, I answered simply. Her head snapped up. But I need it for the party this weekend. Then you should have picked it up, I said, my tone eerily calm. For the first time in a long time, there was panic in her eyes. Then came David. I should have expected him to step in once he realized his perfect little world wasn't running as smoothly. Emma, this isn't funny, he said that evening, his voice edged with frustration. The kids feel like you're punishing them. I stared at him, unblinking. I'm treating them exactly how they treat me. They're just teenagers, he argued. They'll grow out of it. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. He still didn't get it. They don't have to love me, David, I said quietly, but they will respect me. And if they don't, then I'm done playing the role they refuse to appreciate. David rubbed his jaw, as if contemplating his next words. You're being dramatic. I let out a laugh, but it was hollow. No, David. I was dramatic when I was begging for scraps of love and respect. Now, I'm just done. And that was when the shift truly began. Noah missed the bus because I wasn't there to wake him up. Lily had to wear an old dress to the party, and from the sour look on her face, it was practically a social catastrophe. David had to make his own coffee in the morning, and judging by the way he grimaced, he finally realized just how much effort I had put into everything. For years, I had made their lives easier, smoother, comfortable. Now, they were learning what life was like without me. And they didn't like it. Not one bit. But what they didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. At first, they were subtle, small inconveniences they thought they could brush off. Noah grumbled when he had to hand wash his basketball jersey because the laundry pile had grown into a small mountain. Lily sulked when she had to cook for herself, her disastrous attempt at making pasta leaving the kitchen in chaos. Even David, who always acted so composed, started showing signs of strain. It was a Wednesday night when I caught him standing in front of the open fridge, rubbing his temples. "There's no dinner," he muttered, like he couldn't believe it. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. That's usually how it works when no one cooks. His eyes flickered to me, frustration simmering beneath the surface. "Emma, come on. What's the point of this? You're punishing all of us over some teenage attitude?" I let out a slow, measured breath. He still didn't get it. "No, David," I said, voice calm but firm. "I'm letting all of you experience what it's like without me, since apparently I don't matter." His jaw clenched. "Of course you matter." "Do I?" I tilted my head. Because for the past few years, all I've heard is how I'm too controlling, too demanding, how I should just let them do what they want, and you let them walk all over me. David exhaled sharply, like I was being unreasonable. "You're their mother, Emma." I let out a humorless laugh. "That's funny, because last week I was just some lady they live with." His face darkened, like he had forgotten all about that moment. But I hadn't. I would never forget it. That night, Noah snapped first. It was nearly midnight when I heard his door slam open, followed by heavy footsteps stomping down the hallway. I barely had time to set my book down before he stormed into the living room, furious. "Are you serious, Mom?" he barked. "You canceled my gym membership?" I arched an eyebrow. "I sure did." His fists clenched at his sides. "What the hell?" "Noah," I said coolly, "watch your tone." He scoffed. "You're just being petty." I shrugged. "I'm being fair. Since, as you said, I'm not your real parent, I figured I'd stop paying for things like one." His face turned red, but he had nothing to say. I watched him struggle to admit he had taken me for granted, struggle to fight back against the consequences of his own actions. But instead of apologizing, instead of admitting that he had hurt me, he just shook his head and stormed back into his room. I sighed. Typical. Lily cracked next. A few days later, she sat sulking on the couch, scrolling through her phone with absolute misery. "I need a ride to Mia's," she muttered. I didn't even look up. "Good luck with that." She blinked like she had misheard me. "Mom," she huffed, her voice dripping with entitlement. "You always drive me." "Not anymore." Her phone lowered and she stared at me. "You're actually serious?" I finally looked at her, my expression unreadable. "I told you, I'm done being treated like I don't matter. You wanted independence? Congratulations. Now you get to figure things out on your own." Lily's lip quivered like she wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because I was right. They had pushed me away, and now they were feeling the consequences. But what none of them realized, not Noah, not Lily, not even David, was that I wasn't done yet, not even close. The unraveling of my so-called family was slow, but inevitable. It was like watching a sandcastle being eaten away by the tide, little by little, piece by piece, until nothing was left but the wreckage of what once stood tall. David had stopped pretending everything was fine. His once patient demeanor had turned into visible frustration, his voice sharper, his sighs deeper. He didn't say it outright, but I knew he was waiting for me to cave. But I wouldn't. Noah and Lily had officially reached their breaking point. I came home one evening to find Noah pacing in the kitchen, his face twisted in anger. The moment he saw me, he turned on me like a storm ready to strike. "You got rid of my car." I set my keys down slowly. Correction. I stopped making the payments. The dealership took it back. His fists clenched. "You seriously let them repossess my car?" I gave him a cool, measured look. "No, Noah. I let them take back my car. The one I paid for, the one I insured, the one I maintained, the one you drove while treating me like I was just some woman who lived here." Lily, who had been eerily quiet for days, finally snapped as well. I don't even have Wi-Fi anymore, she shrieked from across the room, waving her phone like it was the biggest tragedy of her life. You canceled it? Seriously? Noah's nostrils flared. So what? You're just ruining our lives for fun? I tilted my head. No, I'm just showing you what life is like without me. It was stunning, really, how entitled they had become, how they never even realized that everything they had, the conveniences, the luxuries, the comfort, had been because of me. Now, for the first time, they were forced to see it. David finally spoke up, his voice low but full of tension. Emma, he said, his patience clearly running out. Okay, you made your point, but let's stop this before it goes too far. I met his gaze, my heart pounding. Too far? I repeated, a bitter laugh bubbling up in my throat. Too far was when you let our children disrespect me in my own home. Too far was when you sat there, silent, while they treated me like a stranger. Too far was when you let them push me away, and you did nothing. David pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling sharply. So what? You're going to let this family fall apart over a few teenage mistakes? I stared at him, something inside me cracking wide open. This family was already broken, I said. You just never noticed. A long silence stretched between us. Lily sniffled. Noah's jaw twitched. Even David looked unsure now. They finally felt it. The loss. The absence of the woman who had held everything together. But I wasn't done yet, because they still thought I'd come back. They thought this was a phase, a temporary punishment, something I'd eventually get tired of. They had no idea that I had already made my final decision. And very soon, they would realize it. It wasn't until I started packing my bags that they realized this wasn't just a game. I could hear their voices outside my bedroom door. Noah's frantic pacing, Lily's hushed but sharp whisper, and David's frustrated sighs. They thought I was just throwing a tantrum, that I was trying to teach them some temporary lesson. But this was permanent. The final straw had come 2 nights before, when Noah had the audacity to demand I transfer money to his account because he was short on cash for gas. You owe me, he had snapped when I refused. Owe him? I had sacrificed everything for these ungrateful people, and I owed him? I was done. I had spent years being their caretaker, their provider, their lifeline, all while they dismissed me as if I were a mere inconvenience. The truth was, I had allowed it. I had let them take and take until they forgot who gave it all to them in the first place. But I wasn't letting them take another second of my life. When I pulled my suitcase from the closet and tossed it onto the bed, the door finally burst open. David stood in the doorway, his expression a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. Behind him, Noah and Lily hovered, their faces pale, their arms crossed in some feeble attempt at defiance. David's voice was eerily calm, like he was speaking to a child throwing a tantrum. Emma, let's just stop for a second. Think this through. I didn't pause. I kept folding my clothes, neatly placing them into my suitcase, like it was just another Monday morning. There's nothing to think about, I said simply. Lily let out an exasperated laugh. So what? You're running away just because we hurt your feelings? I turned to her then, my gaze locking onto hers with a cold, piercing finality. No, Lily, I said, voice steady. I'm leaving because I finally understand my worth, and I refuse to stay in a house where I'm treated like a stranger. David ran a hand through his hair. Jesus, Emma, it's not that serious. That set something off in me. I slammed my suitcase shut and took a step forward. Not that serious. My voice trembled, not with sadness, but with rage. David, our children disrespected me right in front of you. They mocked me, treated me like I was nothing, and you let them. You stood by and watched. David's jaw tightened, but he had no excuse. I turned to Noah next. And you, I said, taking another step closer. You looked me in the eye and told me I owed you. Like I hadn't spent years working my ass off to give you everything you ever needed. Noah swallowed, shifting uncomfortably. But he didn't deny it. And then finally, I turned to Lily. And you rolled your eyes and laughed when I said I deserved respect. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. You both think I was just some woman who lived here? Someone who would always be around, cleaning up your messes, making sure your lives stayed comfortable. But you were wrong. Lily opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. No, I don't want to hear your excuses. I don't want to hear your fake apologies now that you know what you're losing. I met each of their gazes, one by one. You only regret it because I'm finally walking away. Noah clenched his jaw. Lily shifted on her feet. And David, for the first time, David looked scared because he realized, too late, that I was serious, that I was never coming back. And as I grabbed my suitcase and walked past them, something inside me felt lighter than it had in years. Because for the first time in a long time, I was finally free. The silence after I walked out that door was deafening. No last-minute apologies, no desperate pleas, just the sound of my suitcase wheels rolling against the pavement as I made my way to my car. My hands were steady as I gripped the steering wheel, but my heart was pounding. Not from fear, not from regret, but from the sheer weight of what I had just done. As I pulled out of the driveway, I half expected David to come running after me, begging me to reconsider. But he didn't. Neither did Noah or Lily. They had been too arrogant, too convinced that I was bluffing. They believed I would come crawling back. They were wrong. That night, I checked into a hotel, turned off my phone, and let the exhaustion sink in. For the first time in years, I didn't feel obligated to take care of anyone but myself. No one was calling my name. No one was demanding anything. The weight of their expectations was finally off my shoulders, but I knew them. I knew this wasn't the end. People like them don't accept consequences. They fight against them. And I was right. The next morning, I turned my phone back on, and the messages started flooding in. David, Emma, let's be reasonable. Come home so we can fix this. Noah, Mom, stop being dramatic. Just come back already. Lily, are you seriously doing this over some stupid argument? I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the reply button. But instead of answering, I did something that shocked even me. I blocked them all. Let them feel my absence. Let them sit in the mess they created. Let them finally understand what it's like to live without me. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt unappreciated, undervalued, or taken for granted, then you know how powerful it is to finally walk away and reclaim your worth. Emma's journey isn't just about betrayal. It's about strength, self-respect, and realizing that sometimes the best revenge is simply choosing yourself. But this isn't the end. What happens next? How do people react when they realize they've lost the person they thought would always be there? Trust me, the fallout is just beginning. If you want to see what happens next, don't forget to like this video. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to walk away from people who didn't deserve you? I want to hear your thoughts. And most importantly, subscribe to Betrayal and the End and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next part of this gripping story. Because sometimes, the people who underestimated you the most are the ones who regret it the hardest. Stay tuned. The best is yet to come.